Hey guys, we're getting ready to do a little practice with the starting of thinking of how to organize a literature review. So if you didn't read this handout on Blackboard, it's labeled what is lit review _ handout 1. You need to stop here, go back, read handout 1, which is page 1 and page 2, and then go ahead and complete handout 2 before you come back to this video, because otherwise you're going to be a little confused and not really able to complete it as we go. That being said, these handouts provide you 3 short editorials on gun control in Virginia. They're all from about 2010, within a year period, so they are related to each other. They're all dealing with the same topic, which means if you were to do an actual literature review on this, they would be acceptable resources. So, the first one was editorial number 1, getting rid of gun control. So after you read it, you were supposed to decide some strengths and weaknesses. Go ahead and drop those in the chat now. All right, editorial number 2 was titled Firearms Still Easily Available, and you can see it went a little bit over on page 2 is from the Richmond Times, and you also had to develop strengths and weaknesses of that one, so go ahead and drop them into me, what you thought strengths and weaknesses were. And then the last one was Virginia Handgun Law, Don't Reopen the Pipeline of Guns. And this was a much shorter one from the Star Ledger. Go ahead and drop to me your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so by now hopefully you saw in the discussion questions, different strengths and weaknesses we saw, and what one person might view as a strength, another may view as a weakness, and that's where discussion happens and conversation happens if we were in person. And you could talk about, well, I liked their use of emotion, however, it got away from them because they got too emotional and I lost sight of the logic. So some strengths and weaknesses I picked out just real quick. In this first one, I think they had a little bit of a tone issue. There's a couple phrases that they used that made them sound like really harsh or judgmental, so we had to pay attention to that. Other ones have come up. Strength, they cite, they don't cite, but they specifically reference some information, but they don't provide citations, or they say like, hey, this is what so-and-so says, but they don't give us a direct quote. So those are things that could come up when you're discussing this. So here's the words. You had unusual law, red tape, inconvenience, honest Americans, nanny state notion. Those phrasings can be a little strong, but if they're not bad, they're just something to think about. Then for number 2, I did think the emotional appeal was a bit of a strength. It really connected us to this person, wanted us to agree with them. Then they didn't really have any citations, but they did give us logical facts. I mean, look at these numbers. Like, that's a great thing that they did. But the last one, something that's typically come up in the past with my students, is the tone. This one has a very aggressive or cocky tone, which is going to turn some people off, and it may have turned you off to it. But they give some specific facts and quotes. So there's definitely plus and minuses to all of those. So in their next step of making a literature review, we'd want to talk about looking at themes and topics that all of them relate to. But before we do, I'm just curious. First, I want you to answer the question, which of the 3 articles was most persuasive to you? Okay, now I want you to tell me which article was the least persuasive to you. And then I want you to tell me, just choose one of those 2 and tell me why now. Okay, so now that I have your opinions, we want to look at the overarching themes and topics that we could see. So one overarching topic that they all discuss is the Virginia Handgun Law. Another topic they would discuss is the effects on people. We have this very personal effect. We have the effect on New Jersey and other areas. And then we also have a discussion of the effect on law-abiding citizens who just want to be able to buy some guns, right? That's what their point was. So what is the law? What are the effects? And then all of them talked about statistics and data, so we would want to have that. So then in a literature review, we'd start pulling them together. So instead of just saying article, 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 we'd say, in the topic of the Virginia gun law, this is all the information that they all discussed. In the topic of effects on people, these 2 show the negative effects and how it affects people who lost their family members, other criminal activities around. However, the Washington Times article points out that people who are just buying guns are also impacted because they can only buy one a month. So if they're trying to buy some as, I don't know, collector's items or something, like you've got these issues, blah, blah, blah. So creating this conversation, weaving together what's already going, because at the end of this literature review, you as the researcher would want to establish where you want to go. So if this was your literature review and you've tied those ideas together, where would you want to take this next for your research? Let me know.